You've probably heard this one before. He or she is just with him for the green card, or he or she is just with him for the passport. And this happens all the time. It's nothing new. People get into transactional relationships where usually one person is just in it for a better standard of living in a Western country or to just get a better passport. In this video, I'm going to go over why I think it's a terrible idea just to get someone for a passport and why I think these passport relationships are going to soon come to an end. Hello everyone, my name is Tristan, the Yonderpreneur. I am on a mission to find self-sovereignty. What does that mean? I am on a mission to find geographic and financial freedom. So before we really get into this, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I am a 20-something-year-old guy and I have never been married, and I was lucky enough to be born to parents from a country that has a pretty strong passport. But I have met many men and women throughout my travels who have warned me of making this awful mistake. To go a little bit further into my story here and why I'm making this video in the first place is that despite my strong passport, I have been in two situations now where I had a visa running out of time, where I was facing the eventual fact that I had to leave the country just because I couldn't switch to another visa. The most recent of these two events was here in Japan. And in Japan, everyone always asks, "Oh, do you have a wife? Do you have a girlfriend?" Despite Japan being, a country where people are very private, very, stick to themselves, they don't ask too many deep questions. But for some reason, whenever you meet someone new in Japan, one of the very first questions they'll ask is, "Oh, do you have a wife or a girlfriend?" And no, it's not just girls asking this, or it's not just friends asking this. It's really everyone. I've asked my female friends, foreign female friends who live in this country also, if they get this question, and they do. Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a husband in Japan? It's just a really common question. Everyone kind of assumes that, especially for men, that every foreign man living in this country has a Japanese partner. And I think that stems from the fact that the most common visa that people have who are living in Japan a long time is actually the spousal visa. So they get their visa because they are married to a Japanese national. So when I've explained my visa situation to people, just seeing if there's any solutions for me, I'm not too dead set in staying in Japan, but I wanted to know what my options were. And one of those options is people always say, just get married. Go marry someone. Like it's no big deal. And in Japan, couples often do get married quite quickly here, sometimes even as fast as 6 months. So it's not like ridiculous to say that. But in my mind, that's pretty ridiculous. You're just marrying someone just to get a visa to continue living somewhere. Because in my opinion, it is almost never worth it to get married just to get a better passport, or to be able to stay in the country longer, or to get a different citizenship. I think marriage is one step way too far just to achieve that goal. And the first reason that I think that it's ridiculous, or it's just too much just for a passport, is reason one being the emotional cost of it. So you'll have a scenario where one person in the party is emotionally invested and then the other isn't, or you'll have situations where neither people in the relationship are emotionally invested and it's just a pure transactional relationship. And frankly, I think that neither one person being emotionally invested or neither people being emotionally invested, both of them are just not good situations. When it comes to relationships, I believe that in business and romantically, these relationships are built on trust and mutual respect. Now, if you're just with someone for a passport, citizenship, or a green card just to stay in a country longer, then there's going to be a really bad disconnect between in trust and mutual respect with each other. And that's just a really bad basis to start any kind of relationship. The second major issue I see with passport relationships is the dependency issue. The dependency issue is like a major reason that I would never enter one of these transactional relationships. I don't say that I'm on a mission to find self sovereignty because it sounds cool. It sounds cool, but I am truly on a mission to find self sovereignty. If I get into one of these transactional relationships, I'm essentially dependent on this person to be able to keep my life in this country. If for whatever reason they don't, we have a disagreement or something, then I can't stay in the country. If the marriage is over, therefore I'm out of the country. So self sovereignty and not being dependent on another person is really important. The next major factor that would be worried about entering a passport marriage is the legal risks. When two people are in a true relationship, it's pretty obvious, or at least you'd think so. But when it's a transactional relationship, these two people have to put on a play, like a show or a dance, and they have to convince the regulators that this is a true relationship. I know some countries take this more strictly than others, but just having to put on the play and being fake, lying, essentially breaking the law, is just a stress that I don't want to have. I'd rather try and find a way to do things independently than have this fear in the back of my head that, oh, I'm going to get deported and fined because I'm in a fake marriage. And that is a good segue to my next point of doing things independently is you probably have a lot of different options. If you want to stay in a country, you don't have to go on a marriage visa. There's tons of other visas that you can get. And we can just take Japan here as an example. You have working holiday visas, you have the J-skip visa. So if you already have a job offer in Japan, there is a visa for that. If you don't have a job yet, you can use the J-find visa, come to Japan, find a job. There's a visa for that. They even have business visas. So if you want to start a business in Japan, invest a certain amount of money, start a business, get a visa. And even they have this brand new visa that I talked about in another video called the digital nomad visa. So if you're working a remote job and you want to come and live in Japan for 6 months, boom, there's a visa for that. So just to keep living in a country, there's tons of other visas you can do. And I even forgot student visas. Student visas are super easy to get, especially in Japan. So there should be no real reason that you have to get married just to stay in a country. The next point I have is thinking more long term. So you go and try and get a visa or passport for a Western country through marriage. Okay, great. You get the passport. Everything went well. You're one of the lucky ones. But it's my opinion that, the opinion of many others in this industry, that these Western passports, like Canada, the United States, and some parts of Europe, these passports are actually going to start declining in their power. When these countries start bringing in massive amounts of unvetted immigrants from countries in Asia, especially, make them do hoops to get into their countries and do complicated visas just to become a tourist in the country. Now these people are going into Canada, getting a passport in Canada because it doesn't take too long, 3 years. They get that passport, and now they can go to Japan, and then it's like a quick way of being able to get A-tier passport. But now all these people from these less desirable countries have Canadian passports. And now Japan might say, the kind of people that were coming from Japan, that were coming from Canada in the past, are very different from the people that are coming from Canada in the present. Maybe we should get rid of the visa-free travel for them because they're coming to our country and causing issues. So I'm thinking that these Western passports aren't going to have the same strength that they have now that they will in the future. And I also think that some of these lesser known countries like Serbia, like Georgia, Armenia, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, these countries had not so great passports for the longest time, but their governments are actively working towards becoming really good passports. Now they have more visa options than some of the more typical European nations or typical Latin American nations. So I think we're gonna have an event that happens that takes the good passports down and it takes the passports that were bad a little bit further higher, and then we'll be kind of close to this medium range. So just putting all this effort into getting married just to get a Western tier passport that might start declining in its value is it's a lot of work for something that's not guaranteed. The last thing that you need to consider if you're ever planning on doing one of these passport marriages is the financial implications of divorce. These passport marriages aren't Disney movies or funny haha Adam Sandler movies.
Can we start the story now?
Where the quirky guy gets with a beautiful girl just for a passport, and then they end up falling in love. Like, I'm sure that happens, and it's probably really heartwarming. Um, but that's not the average. That is very rare. Most of these are going to end in divorce, and you have to be prepared for that. So if you're in this transaction relationship where trust and mutual respect weren't really there from the beginning, divorce can get like extremely nasty. It's more nasty than regular divorces, but it's still just as bad. And of course, someone in the comments will probably say, "Oh, that's what prenups are for. That's what prenups are for." Well, the problem with getting a prenup here is that A, some countries don't do them, but also B, if you're trying to convince a government or convince regulators that this is indeed a legitimate marriage when it's not, getting a prenup, which they can see, is kind of like, well, is how legitimate is this? You guys have this prenup in place. So without a prenup, she is or he is technically entitled to half assets. So whatever assets you came into this with, you might be on the hook to losing them, which is not great. Like, why did you do this in the first place when you could probably have just gotten like some sort of independent visa to keep living in the country? And then on top of that, you have court fees, you have potential lawyer fees, you have maybe even alimony fees. It's not worth it. Just try and find a different visa that's independent. Now that I've been negative the entire video, let's talk about some positive things about marriage and visas and passports. If you're in a true relationship, I recommend that if your spouse has a decent passport, go ahead and get it. Like, that is a great idea. Like, if you guys are in a legitimate relationship and they have a strong passport, and your passport is weak, get it. Like, it's a good idea. But you want to make sure that you're with this person for this person and not their passport. The passport can be like those little sprinkles on top, but you want the whole sundae. Eating sprinkles on their own is, it's kind of gross. And the marriage route can be like really effective. You can get a lot of shortcuts just by getting married. For example, in Spain, it would normally take 10 years for a non-Latin person to get a Spanish citizenship, and you can cut that down to 1 year if you marry a Spanish citizen. Portuguese citizenship usually takes 5 years, but if you marry a Portuguese citizen, it gets cut down to 3. Italy usually takes 10 years, but if you marry an Italian, it gets cut down to 3. If you marry a Brazilian citizen, you can get Brazilian citizenship in 1 year. Switzerland, really good passport, usually takes 10 years for naturalization, but it can be cut down to 5 if you're married to a Swiss citizen and live in Switzerland. So there's obviously huge benefits to doing citizenship through marriage, but you have to make sure that it's a legitimate marriage, or else these benefits aren't going to be worth the stress and the costs associated with doing it through a transactional fake marriage. That is it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you have been through this situation before and you went through a transactional marriage, or you've heard stories of it, put those stories and experiences in the comments below so we can all learn from them. And if you like this video, let me know what kind of videos you'd like to see more of. Would you want more crypto-based videos? You want more citizenship by investment-based videos? Let me know in the comments below, and I will get to them. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.